Ta-da!
All right. Back again, week two, just hanging out and talking about we have some topics up today, some trauma and some other probably dating stuff and just life advice and stuff in general.
Mhm.
Um, I got my camera up this week, so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully for recording it's good. I don't think it'll be bad, and if it does, I'll just put another picture or something over it, but it is what
I'm
it
sure it'll
is.
be fine.
Yeah,
Not
I'm
to
sure
worry
we'll get there.
about. Mhm.
Um, Introductions. Jen Iraqi here. Jennifer? Is that what you would prefer?
Yeah, I like Jennifer.
Okay,
Jennifer's
Jennifer
great.
Iraqi. I'm Bradley Fliss, but I like Brad, so
Brad
Brad's
and
fine.
Jen. Let's do.
Yeah,
We can do Brad and Jen.
Brad and Jen is fine. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's good.
sounds great.
Um, why's the man gotta be first? Why can't it be Jen and
I
Brad?
think
Yeah,
Brad and Jen, Jen and Brad. They both sound good. We'll
yeah.
just alternate every week and keep
Sure.
score. Who says
Yeah,
Brad? Who says Jen first?
yeah, yeah. But very progressive of us.
Yeah, very progressive.
Um, so I think we had talked that we were going to talk about trauma and stuff and
Yeah,
how it shapes you as a person and
the lessons we learn from our
yeah,
traumas.
childhood and adolescence and things like that. I don't know, I guess come to think of it, not too much trauma happens to you as an adult because maybe you've put up your walls and you prepare yourself for things like that. I don't know, I haven't had too many traumatic experiences. I've had some moments where I'm like, oh well, that's surprising, but I guess you could see it coming. You know.
Mhm. Hmm.
Um,
I think as adults, we've learned from our childhood traumas to avoid repeating the same trauma, or we've either learned to navigate it and avoid it, making the same mistakes, or we continue to re traumatize ourselves throughout life and continue to make the same mistake over and over and over again.
True. Yeah, I've seen a lot of situations,
Mhm.
typically bad relationships, and it's like, oh, I'm in an abusive relationship, and it's like, well, you're the one who can control you and your destiny. So it's like, well, why are you leaving yourself in such a crappy situation?
Yeah, just making the same traumatic. And that's the thing is that I think in relationships, if you're repeating the same cycle and you don't know why, it's probably because you're being triggered. There's a trauma response that's happening that you're not in control of. You're
Hmm.
reacting opposed to responding, and that causes a lot of damage over time.
Hmm. Do you
So,
have any like examples of that? What are you trying to say?
yeah, so I guess I could use myself as an example. We'll get nice
Okay.
and vulnerable for a minute. I
Okay.
remember my past partner, anytime that he would go on a business trip, I would freak out. I would just get really anxious and insecure. And I would pick fights. And the reactivity inside of me, because it was unmet trauma of being like abandoned and left as a child,
Hmm.
that I felt like I was being abandoned, but I didn't realize what was happening in my mind and body. I was just picking fights to get attention. Like that's not healthy. I've since worked,
Yeah.
it's no longer an issue, but that's an example of that reactivity trauma opposed to a genuine response where you're like, oh, I'm feeling insecure because my partner is leaving. And because he's leaving, I'm lashing out to get the attention that I need. But now I'm aware of this process and I can work through the trauma. And so in my next relationships, it doesn't have to hold me back, or I don't repeat the same cycle.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're not just seeking attention,
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and you recognize it. I mean, it's still okay to reach out, but maybe not to like the degree that you did. You probably could still reach out and be like, hey, like I do care and I do want to talk to you and stuff, and I miss you, and tell them in a healthy way, that you want to see them and stuff. But yeah, then you don't have to go down that road of
What about you, Bradley? What's
neediness.
some valuable lessons that you've learned from your traumatic experiences?
Which ones?
Which ones? All right, let's go back and talk. Which
Yikes.
traumatic
Back to the beginning.
beginning of time?
Um, uh, a lot of my traumatic experiences come from my childhood and growing up in the home that I did. There was a lot of drugs around our house. Um, I don't know. I want to say things without like just being too rough and specific, um so a lot of drugs around the house, and there was a lot of abuse, and sadly a lot of it psychological. And I'm actually really surprised that I turned out, and it could be part of why I turned out so aware and just socially aware and of my surroundings and settings, and just knowing, like, when we were kids we were told, like, don't answer the door for anyone, even if they say they know you're here and they, know we're here, just tell them we're not home. And a lot of sketchy people coming to the door, probably looking for drugs or money or
Mhm.
things like that. So yeah, it was bad for, a kid's scenario. Saw a lot of parties, but I did meet a lot of real people in
Mhm.
those scenarios, like a lot of guys that would come over. I would call them uncle now, and they're not really my uncle, but I'm like, you were there for like all of my childhood, and like, probably took some better care of me than times of, my own parents.
Mhm.
Um,
So what did
so,
those times teach you? What did you learn?
um, what I learned really is like at a young age, like I remember being maybe not even double digits, but just saying to myself that like I'm already more of a man than my father would ever be. And, just like crying to myself as a kid and going to sleep crying a lot, and he'd just come back from the bar and yell at us. And sometimes he would just talk at us, talk to us while we were, pretending to be asleep in bed because we got school the next morning. And he's just, oh, like, I don't know. He'd always say he was things. I think it's narcissism because he'd always say he was things and that he was going to do things, but he'd
Mhm.
never act on it. It was all talk. It was all show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the best dad and I gave you guys everything. And I'm like, man, I got one pair of shoes a year. Last year's gym shoes were this year's shoes. And the thing is, we were not poor. My
Mhm.
dad made a good chunk of change. He worked in the union and he made good money, and the drugs and stuff too. So like we had money. He was just, tight with it, and just psychological abuse. Like we thought, and he was a con man. He still kind of cons people. Not, I mean, I think he actually is a con, but he was just a con man, and he would um just get people to do favors for him, and let's always nickel and diamond people and telling people like, oh, I got 4 hungry kids at home, and he's at a garage sale with a $25 couch, and he's just got to like talk him down to $18, and
Mhm.
it's like we're not that poor. We
Yeah.
were on the lunch program at school, and he was telling him that we didn't have enough. And yeah, there's 4 kids, so that's also a reason, because it was a lot of money. It's a reason to be on like the cheap, program or whatever. But if he would have just put the drugs down, or just stopped frivolously spending his money like he was made of it, then
Mhm.
but that's another thing, is that's his trauma, is he was just a spoiled brat. His dad gave him everything, so he never had to learn much about money, and just spends it poorly today. So, but that's his thing, and just how he treated us was shitty. But he did a lot of psychological things, which is what also really sucked. And I just don't know how I or others aren't messed up, from it. And I'm sure there are, and my brother was for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that something that you want to touch on, or should we?
I can touch on that. We'll probably hit that in a sec. But like some of the things he would do psychologically wise was he would make me take off his boots when he got
Mhm.
home from work, like every day. And I had to
Mhm.
get on my hands and knees and take off his stinky boots, And yeah, he would make me like walk on his back, and as kids just kind of just run us like slaves. And then,
Mhm.
him and Ma would go off to the bar, and they would just leave us kids. Most of the time they would cook. I would say they would cook food at least half of the time. Mom would cook something. you know they were good cooks, but sometimes I just wouldn't even cook dinner. So it was like fend for yourself. One of my stories is I used to make grilled cheese in a microwave, and I don't know if you've ever made grilled
No,
cheese in a microwave. No, it's not.
it's not
It's
impressive. I
no,
just never considered making grilled cheese in
it's
a microwave.
hard bread. Well, take bread, butter it, put 2 pieces of cheese, and microwave it. The bread just gets hard and crunchy and shitty, and then you just break off the crust, like break off, like hard, and
Mhm.
then you just eat the stuff in the middle, because we weren't allowed to use the stove when we were really young.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we all took care of each other, so it grew our bond, um,
Yeah,
as
there's one.
siblings. Yeah.
You
So.
guys bonded to take care of each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's good. I don't know. I look down at my keyboard a lot, but it's just because I'm thinking. I'm not, not looking away because I don't know what to say. I'm just like remembering all this stuff.
It does seem to be coming back to you all of a
Hmm.
sudden and like really bubbling up for you, and you seem a little bit lost in the traumatic memories.
Yeah. I mean, it's all there. It's always there. Like I remember it and I see,
Yeah.
maybe other parents taking similar steps. And I'm just like, oh, like I know what that's going to do to that kid, you know? And like never help us with our homework. Just be like, is your homework done? But they weren't capable. Mom would help us sometimes. We'd pull the old, oh, mom, I got a project due and it's due tomorrow.
Mhm.
Oh, crap. We got to get what now? We got to get all this stuff together and do that project. So, I don't know. That was always kind of cute.
So yeah, what's a valuable lesson that you learned from that array of different trauma experiences from your childhood?
Um, I think that I learned, like I said a little earlier, like I learned what I don't want to be and what it is to be. Like I can recognize psychological, not warfare, but recognize psychological issues like gaslighting and things, I think a lot easier now because I can see those things coming in those steps. And I'm just like, oh, like, you're being strung along or, you know, um, I understand psychology really well and I try not to use it as um, a weapon myself, I guess, is also something that I learned is like what it can do to someone and like taking advantage of their psyche is just not, you
Yeah.
know,
It's surprisingly like human beings, we want to believe that we're strong and capable and resilient. I'm like, no, hate to break it to you. Human beings are fragile, they're susceptible to suggestion,
programmable.
programmable.
Yeah.
Oh man, like trauma, do you know what that does to your brain? It rewires everything.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, no. Like if you understand psychology, like that is a privilege and you should use it carefully.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like use
Like,
it for good. Use it for good. And you do use it for
yeah,
good. I
I
do
do.
too.
And I try. I've never intentionally used any psychology tactics against people to get anything out of them. I don't know. It's just to me it would just be too easy. I'd rather seek a
Be
challenge
too
from a
easy.
person.
It's
I
disturbing how programmable we are.
Yeah. I'd like to make friends with people who are aware of those tactics, but also who I think another thing too about trauma is that I really like to talk to and identify with people who have trauma. I think it's easier to get to them because they can sense it.
Mhm.
Trauma sees trauma. So they sense it, they know it, and they're like, oh, hey, like this
Yeah.
guy is being genuine. He does want to hear my story. And I don't mind opening up to him because he's probably seen a lot of crap too.
It's
So
a different level of like people who have not had traumatic experiences. They're like here with their life. People who have, they could be deep, 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 deep down into this horrible darkness, or they could overcome it and far exceed like their ability to connect, their ability to grow, all of these things in people who haven't. But then
mhm.
I could be wrong because then I think of people who haven't had any traumatic experiences. I'm like, they started this stable, simple level, and often they're just content because they don't have to work themselves up. They're just there.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
I
everyone's
think I
different.
think trauma in the end teaches you that
Mm.
it gives you a lot of red flags, like you can recognize them easier. Once you've had them, you're just like, oh yeah, I know what this is. This is abuse. This is gaslighting. This is physical abuse. This is like, I had a friend who um, would I can tell a lot of people when like they are on drugs too. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you can't tell, and I'm like, I can tell right away.
Yeah.
For the most part, any posturing change, any like almost Sherlock Holmes level, just like a stagger in your step or like a slur in your speech. Like I was talking to my roommate one time, and I was like, you kind of have a little bit of a lisp. And he's like, what? And I was like, no, I don't. And I was like, you kind of do. But just no one really notices it. It mostly only comes out when like he's excited and he's trying to like talk really fast, and it's just like, I think you got a little something there. But I don't know, you notice things, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe not like that, but like red flag kind of stuff too, so you just know what
Yeah.
to look for in people.
You become hyper vigilant,
Hmm.
paying attention to all of those things that had hurt you in the past. So you're
Hmm.
very sensitive to anything that lights up those parts of the brain that make you go,
Hmm.
oh, I've dealt with this before. I don't want to deal with it again.
Hmm.
And that can be healthy. But at the same time, like for me and my trauma, I know, so I'm a sexual trauma survivor and I've overcome that. But for a very long time, like any type of touch was a huge like red flag, even like a hug from someone that I know and trust.
Hmm.
So the problem with trauma is it can really over activate the brain where it's like everything is a risk and everything is potential damage. So that's the challenging part of trauma is you can't overcome it. It does get better. You can rewire the brain, but for a while your brain is on hyper alert and that's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And like I think it stunted my development just socially in
Yeah.
general. um I mean,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, I was a awkward, weird looking kid, and I got bullied on the bus. I was very soft spoken as well, and a lot of young guys are just doing whatever. And I was very soft spoken, very quiet. Just kept, mind my own business, because that's what I knew is, in the lifestyle my parents chose. Like we were told to keep secrets and mind your own business, and you know look the other way when a lot of things are happening too. Money exchanges and things like that. Just, you didn't see nothing, dude. And it's like, yep, we were told like, you didn't see nothing. This isn't here. You don't know about this. Like, yep, okay, cool. It's like having your kids keep secrets at a young age.
Yeah, it's hard.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, and at times he'd be like, well, that's the only way I could keep your kids fed. And I'm like, well, that's a lie. Cause like my grandpa, his dad just gave him money. Whenever something was wrong, his dad would just buy him out. You just pay for anything. Need a new car? Take care of the grandkids. Here's money. Need a
Yeah.
garage for your house? Here's money. And it's just like, I'll never have that. I'll never have that opportunity. My mom, great woman, but doesn't work a whole lot, and didn't work because she was a stay-at-home mom. And then dad had all the money, so he just paid all the bills. So, she struggled later in life too, to like have to keep track of all that and pay all that stuff too. And she helped out with that stuff. But, I think that my dad was like the runner of the home, but he was like, I think, narcissist level, where he like chose to and like needed to and had to run the home. I don't remember where I was going with that.
We're talking about the valuable things that come out of trauma. Like we
Hmm.
know it's shitty, we know it breaks us down, we know it can destroy us, but it can really light us up. It can really make us into better people.
It can, I wish it didn't. And I think that, every failure makes you wiser, a better person. It may
Failure.
suck. It may suck that sometimes you'll put up walls that are thicker than they need to be, you
Yeah.
know, and it's going to take someone patient and special and, you know, aware, and like take that time with you and help you open up again. I've had to do that with a few friends too, where they were just like, shut it all out, shut it all down. I don't want either the friendship or the relationship that you're offering. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, right, but like I genuinely, am interested in your history and where you come from, and what would be good or bad for you. So, help you take care of you.
I find it interesting when you said those walls become thicker than they need to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. I like that
Yeah,
idea. And it's sad because sometimes they do. We put up such walls and such protection to protect our mind, our body, our heart from getting damaged again, like how we
right.
were traumatized.
Especially if I wouldn't say trauma. I mean, I guess like someone like leaving you for someone else
Mhm.
is, definitely traumatic. So I guess there's been quite a few times, sadly, regrettably, of that in my life. But
It's sad,
I
Brad.
think you put up I think you put up bigger walls every time because you're more aware of it, you're more aware of it, and then it's just like, oh, it happened again. Okay, I'll just put up a bigger wall this time. So
Mhm.
I think I'm becoming more. I guess another thing too, though, is I'm becoming more patient, and I've always recognized the red flags, but now I'm probably listening to them more,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, oh, this really won't be worth my time. You know,
Mm.
like this is just you have growing to do, and I don't want to be the one to teach it to
Yeah.
you at this point.
I I think that goes in the concept of after you've been traumatized, you really grow to learn. Hopefully, you grow to learn what you need and you learn to love yourself so much that you invest in people who give you what you need. And if they don't, and they're putting off these red flags, you go because you love yourself enough to know I don't deserve to deal with that. I'm not going to. I love
Mhm.
myself enough because I've gone through hell and gotten through it that I know what I deserve.
So that's also a big thing that I think I relate with people who have had trauma too, is those people have had trauma and they've come back from it and they've learned from it and they're better people for it. And they appreciate, the good things. I think I might have said this a little bit last week too, but I'm a big preacher of it. But it takes a little pain and it takes a little trauma to appreciate good times when they're good.
Mhm.
You may in a relationship be like, oh, this little thing that they do is just drives me nuts. And it's like, but really, is it that annoying? Like they don't eat green M&Ms. Like, is it breakup worthy? Is it going to drive you
Is it a
nuts to
deal
the point where
breaker?
like you can't be with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, it's really like you can let it go.
I like the question. Is it a deal breaker? Like, is this something? Yeah,
And I
I know.
think people who have maybe been in bad relationships and also bad situations are like, all right, this one really isn't a deal breaker. Maybe this is something that I just need to not have anxiety over and kind of just let go, like, the men and throwing their clothes in the hamper, like, oh, it drives girls crazy when we throw it, we miss, and it just sits outside the hamper. And I'm like, I know where it is. It's dirty. I'll get it in the hamper when I go take the laundry up to do the laundry. But it might just drive them crazy, like, why don't you just put it in there? And it's like, I don't know, I just threw it, I missed, and it landed on the floor. I wasn't going to take the
Mm.
5 steps into the room because I'm going to have to take those 5 steps later to put it in the to go get the hamper. So I don't
Mm.
know, it's just how we're all wired. But to just
Could relate to trauma. You never know.
yeah,
What if her trauma has to do with dirty laundry on the floor?
true, but that needs to be relayed. And I think
Yeah,
that is
communication.
another great intro to a topic of talking about trauma um, with other people, especially if it's going to affect your relationships.
Mhm.
If it's going to play any role in your relationship, it's something that you should talk about and be aware of at least.
That bothers me so much because like I want so much in my heart of hearts to just be done with my trauma. I don't
Mhm.
want to start a new relationship. Be like, I'm a sexual trauma survivor. I've dealt with this. I dealt with that. I dealt with that. I've overcome it. I was like, if the person continues to trigger me, then I don't want to be in the relationship. I should explain why. This is what I would do. I would explain what's happening, where the trigger is coming from, why it's happening, let them know why. And hopefully they respect me enough to not do those things.
Right,
And
right,
if they don't, that's obviously someone I don't want to be in a relationship with.
right.
So I mean, going back to the laundry on the floor example, if my trauma related to laundry, and I went to my partner and I said, it really bothers me. It reminds me that when I see laundry on the floor, not that this happened, this is me coming up with an example, but when I see laundry on the floor, it reminds me of when my mom was hitting my dad, or my dad would hit my mom because she didn't do the laundry, and it was very dramatic, and it just brings out these emotions for me. And every time I see a sock on the floor, I freak out. And this is
Right.
just, but you got to be able to express that to your partner. I think that's the
Hmm.
point you were trying to make.
Yeah, and I think that telling them and making them aware is like, all right, you know what? It
Yeah.
really and maybe my compromise would be like, all right, I'm gonna move the hamper to
Mhm.
like the laundry room where I actually take off my clothes, and then it'll be in the hamper
Yeah,
in, or in the bathroom, in the shower,
yeah,
or, by the front of the door and not all the way across the room, like if it was right here by my front bedroom door, then it's like, oh, then as I walk through, I can drop it off. Whereas if it's all the way across the room for some reason, or like in the closet, I'm not going to walk over, open the closet, drop it in there. Like,
yeah.
like let's at least maybe make a compromise as well.
Yeah.
If it's to that level, let's make it easier for me, and then let's also that will make it easier for you. I'm not saying that you need to accommodate me accommodating you, but if it's going to help to just move,
Mhm.
if you can both take steps towards it, like you
Yeah,
let me know I'm aware of it and I can take steps to avoid it,
sure.
that would be something easy that you could do. But let's say it was something that would, that's just an example, something that would maybe need more compromise,
Yeah.
that
I'm
I don't
just,
know. I can't think of a good example for that.
it's so weird because sometimes I feel like that the traumatic responses that I had, and then the needs that I had at the time when I was healing, there was no compromise. And it sounds so harsh, but like, for example, I hated when someone put their hand on my shoulder. And when
Okay.
my romantic partner would put his hand on my shoulder, I would freak out.
Mm,
And that was a trigger for me. I'm like, please don't put your hand on my shoulder. It bothers me. It triggers me. Um, and you want your partner to respond in an empathetic way and go, oh, okay, I understand. I won't do that. Thank you for telling me. But then it kept happening and he kept putting his hand on my shoulder. I'm like, what? Do you don't understand what I'm trying to tell you? Like how much it bothers me that you do this and you're not respecting the fact that it bothers me so much. It triggers me so much. And I'm trying to tell you and you don't get it. Like,
yeah.
that's respectful. Obviously that relationship is
And
now.
that, yeah, and that's just a big red flag to be like,
Yes.
this person is not willing, they're not really listening to me, they're not willing to um listen when we have an issue. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's also a sign to me that they don't have enough respect for you or the relationship to actually want to do that. That seems like such a simple thing to do.
Doesn't it?
And yeah,
So does
I mean,
so does throwing your laundry in the basket. It seems like such a simple thing to do.
right, right.
Just saying.
But even then, to like do it and then be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I did it again, it's just a habit that
Yeah.
I do. um but to just not make yourself aware and tell yourself, and maybe not train yourself, but just be like, all right, like, you know
I think
keep
accepting
happening. But
responsibility
to me
is
it would, and that's why I come back to,
mm,
if and when you left that relationship, you would say like, hey, part of the reason that I do need to break up with you is not just because you kept putting your hand on my shoulder, but also because you didn't respect or care the fact that I told you countless times I just didn't want you to do that.
yeah.
And that's more of a, don't respect you. If you want me to put the laundry away because it's part of your trauma, then I'm not respecting you. If you want me to put the laundry in the hamper because it just annoys you, like, okay, I will try to be more aware of it,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to like try to reprogram myself to make sure that it happens every time. And I wouldn't expect anyone to have to be so rigorous in that, to accommodate a relationship.
Yeah. It sounds like a
So
sore spot for you.
no, it's just an example that I just keep
Oh,
using.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened before, it's like the toilet seat thing. It's just, no, it's
For
not
me, it
fun.
was leaving a can of Coke on the counter, like completely clean kitchen, but like an empty can of Coke, and the garbage can's like right there. I'm like, I don't understand why
See,
you
to
wouldn't just.
me, it's like, it's not worth the argument. Like, if my partner were doing that, I would just grab it and throw it away. I just,
And I do that now. I do that
yeah.
now. But at the
It's
time, I
like,
was like,
why nitpick? Why get salty about it? And then don't do things that passive aggressive things
ah,
that, now I'm guilty of this. I was going to say that women do, but do things like, all the cans that get left over and over, make a tower out of them, like, oh, look, we make this great tower out of these empty cans. And it's like, why would you why would you put his,
huh.
issue out on display like that. And now you're like making it an issue, by, I
Yeah.
don't know. And to me, it's like all of that could have been avoided by just doing it yourself, the
Mhm.
little things you could do. And I think that's another thing of people with trauma is it's like, if it's little and I can just deal with it, I'm just going to deal with it because they're used to having to just fix things on their own,
Mhm.
and fix their lives and their emotions usually.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm just not going to deal with that. I'm not going to address it. I'm
Mhm.
not saying it's not healthy because it's really not healthy, but if it's really, what is it, learned learned pacifism or something, it's just like if it's out of your control, like don't, what are you going to do about it,
Yeah.
don't
Hmm.
make your life or their life worse because that's just going to create undue tension. If you tell me every day you hate that Coke can and every day I put it back there, I mean, now if he starts doing it on purpose, then it's like, all right, now you're just doing it to be spiteful, and
Makes
now
me
we have
wonder.
other issues. Yeah, and
Does.
that's, and then a lot of guys. I mean, I'm speaking from experience, not myself, but stories that I've heard is where guys get in that rut. We'll use the soda can thing as an example,
Sure.
and it's just a downward spiral. She'll say, "Please don't do that," and then she'll just, after like the third or fourth time, she'll get really mean about it, be like,
Mhm.
I can't fucking stand, and just like get really up in arms about it. And then he'll be like, okay, but then he'll just start doing it on purpose to get a rise out of her because now he knows it gets at her. And then she gets madder, he laughs, and then they get madder, and then they start growing apart and fighting as a couple. And then eventually, something snaps or breaks, and it's just all stemmed out of something that to me could have just been avoided, you know.
Yeah. You're right. It could have just easily been avoided. In
Either
my
of them could have stepped up to the plate, but is it worth? Then again, at what point is it negligence of the partner and disrespectful? You know,
in my experience, when we have those extreme reactions, it's usually a traumatic response. It always is. It's a reactive response. So if
Mhm.
someone leaves the Coke can out, I might explode and say, what the hell? Like, I don't know why that would be, trying to process why that would be a traumatic response. Or if like past Jen would pick a fight because I wanted the relationship to end. Maybe that was it.
That's a thing too. Is a
It's
lot
like,
of usually one partner kind of knows it should end and just doesn't say anything because it's convenient, and you don't want to hurt them. That's the hardest part about mutual or even one-sided breakups, but that you would be sacrificing yourself or a part of yourself to stay with said person, and
it's like a subconscious, I want you to get
not
away
fair.
from me, or I want this relationship to end, but I don't have the audacity, not the audacity, the skill to break up with you. So I'm gonna nitpick
the
things
the
and
heart,
push you away.
the heart to do it. I mean, this isn't me, but people slowly push you away because they want to, instead of addressing the reason that you do want to break up, like let's just say like you want kids right now, I don't want them, or I want them later.
Mhm.
And I know that it's eventually going to break up, so I start doing things that push you away, or things that don't really annoy me. I tell myself that they annoy me, and then I tell you that they annoy me. And I just make you jump through hoops to accommodate me. And I'm just being nitpicky about things that I don't really, whatever. And then eventually we end up fighting a lot more and
Yeah,
things spiral out. But that's what one person wants. They want it to spiral out. So it
they want,
feels like a mutual thing. Like we
yeah.
don't love each other anymore. Right. But
Yeah.
where did that stem from?
Mhm.
What caused this? I was talking to a friend once and she's like, we haven't had sex in our relationship for months. I think I talked about this a little last week. Like we haven't had it in months. And it's just like, where did that start? Why is it like that? Like, and then it started with her not wanting to because he was just being a slob, and she was just like, I hate it when you do this and this.
Yeah.
And she would buy groceries and she would be like, don't take my etc etc. If you want me to get more, I will get more. I'll buy more soda, or I don't want to use specifics because I don't know, it's pretty on point if you know the specifics. um,
Yeah.
but it's just
Privacy.
like, like, and then they would just take the soda, and it's like, you're just disrespecting me. You're just
Mhm.
taking the things that I said, please don't take. You
Yes,
know,
just
like I want one of these for lunch every day. And it's like, and if you're gonna just replace them, you know, but it just started with disrespect. And then it was like, could you please just do this, this, and this around the house or clean up after yourself at least?
yeah.
Or like pay me for the money that you owe me. And then,
Mhm.
you know, person would just go out and buy things that they didn't need. And it's like, you owe me money, but you're not paying me back. You're just spending this, you know, willy nilly in things. And, you know, it's just like, just spiraling out of control. And at some point, he was aware he was doing it, you know, and he was
Yeah.
just doing it to get back at her, push his buttons, you know.
That's not a healthy relationship. It
No,
sounds,
right, right. And it
yeah.
ended, and that's good.
Love really is like a healthy relationship really is loving and tender and kind and generous. You will throw away the Coke can because it doesn't matter. You will pick up the dirty laundry in the hallway and throw it in the hamper because it doesn't matter. You will
Mhm.
continue to do the little things for your partner because you love them.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
And to the point now where it doesn't become, you know, catering to them and becoming like a
Yeah.
slave to them.
Not
I
like,
get that. And
yeah.
that's kind of how someone may use psychology and stuff to manipulate a partner is like, I know that their weakness is their tender kindness and they'll take care of me and just clean up and do everything for me. So it's like, oh, honey, can you bring me? I've seen this happen a lot too. This is like a lot of just lazy guys, but it's just like, can you bring me a soda? And it's like, bro, like you could just go get one. Like she's literally doing the dishes, and the girls will be like, "That's okay. I love you. I'll do that thing for you."
Oh no,
And then it's
like
just like,
fawning. So we call that fawning in psychology.
okay,
So the traumatic responses sometimes it's fight, fawn, flees, fight, fawn, flee, or fight. And when we fawn over someone, we like constantly meet their needs because
uh-huh.
we're so afraid that if we don't meet their needs, they won't meet ours. So we get them their coffee and we cook them their dinners and we clean their house and we vacuum like crazy and we make sure that they always have, dinner on the table and a lunch being made and we care for the kids and we do this and we do that. And it's exhausting when you fawn over that person out of fear that if you don't do it, they won't meet your needs.
Or they'll stop meeting your needs. Like
Or
if
the
your needs are met, but you might be like, oh, like I'm gonna lose them if I don't do these things.
yes, and that's a traumatic trauma bond right there.
Hmm.
So being able to have that self-awareness of acknowledging, am I doing this because I genuinely love them, or am I doing this out of fear and preoccupation out of losing them? That if I don't make them breakfast in the morning, they're gonna leave me.
Yeah.
Like that's not healthy either. That's
I
very
see that commonly in younger girls because they really want to make it work and it's maybe first or second boyfriend or something and they really want to make it work. So they really will just fawn and just do anything to make sure, you know, and then these guys just take advantage of that and they're just like, oh, I'm, you know, like I'm just
That's
going to get what I want and I don't really care. Because what they get in the cycle of is I'm going to still get everything that I want out of
mhm,
this relationship without having to put too much in, and maybe the girl has just simple needs, like
yeah,
just a movie night or a cuddle night or something. And,
yeah.
as long as he's meeting that, she thinks she needs to do everything for them. And it's,
It's sad when people
I
just
don't
fawn
know.
over the other, you know. And there are
Yeah.
some people who are so fawning, they're so fawn. I don't know, they like to do it so much that I forget where I was going with that. My brain shut down for a second.
If
That it
they
becomes like
fawn, becomes a what?
it becomes obsessive for them. And if they don't have the opportunity to fawn over someone, then they start to feel worthless. And that's a
Mm,
whole other psychological game of
yeah,
worth. It's like
right. That if you can't
care for
provide for
someone.
someone.
Yeah. That is, yes, people who are like providers and givers and givers and givers, that their sense of value and self-worth comes from giving to other people.
Mhm.
Also unhealthy. There's
Yeah.
a balance to be struck. Like all of those, the fight, fawn, flees, freeze, and flee. There's appropriate times to engage in all of them, and there's a balance. You don't want to like constantly be fighting or constantly be running away. You want to have like a nice, consistent when's an appropriate time for me to step away from this relationship and come back to it later. When's
Mhm.
an appropriate time for me to fawn over someone if they're sick? You make them soup, you pat their head, you kiss them on the forehead. There's appropriate times to do these things,
Mhm.
psychologically speaking. But if
Mhm.
you're doing it out of anxiousness or fear or because of trauma, got to have that realization why am I doing this? Why really reflect? Why am I acting this way? Is it something from my past that's forcing me or inspiring me, or is my brain programmed to do this because I've experienced something traumatic? What's really going on?
And then what may suck too, and like I said, I've seen it, a lot of girls do the fawning thing in younger years. What ends up happening too is they end up they end up like not being as fawning or caring or giving in their
Oh,
preceding relationships. And it's like, it sucks to see because you as a person loved doing that, but you were taken advantage of to the
mhm.
point where like you just don't feel as into it or loving, and you're just harder now and hardened, and
So
that
sad.
happens too. I
It's
was gonna
hard
say,
too.
yeah,
Yeah. When
I
we've
was
been,
gonna say too, you said freezing. I
mhm,
don't know the terminology, but I do believe I've dated a freezer. Every
mhm,
time we actually needed to like sit down and have a serious conversation, she'd just be like,
mhm.
just freeze up and just not say anything, just look at the ground. Then as soon as I'd like leave for work or, start going somewhere, she would just text me and I'd be like, no, like I need to talk to you about this in real life. Like we're not doing this where you can't communicate, you can't talk. Like
Mhm.
I
Oh,
think that stemmed from her previous relationship before me at that time though, was he was in control of everything. Uh,
yeah.
and he like even
Mm,
had the passwords to like her Facebook and
mhm.
um her Xbox, like all her gaming stuff. Like she
That's,
wasn't allowed to even play or do anything unless he was home or around. And
wow.
like he would go through her phone every day and see who she was messaging.
Oof.
Yeah.
I feel for you because like you want to be able to engage with your partner in the moment. But I dated someone and he would also just kind of freeze and shut down emotionally and like look to the side. And I felt really disconnected. And that's what ended up damaging our relationship so much, is because I wanted him to engage with me in the moment.
Hmm.
He could do it via text, he could do it via email, but he couldn't do it in the moment when I needed him to respond and say, okay, I hear you, like look me in the eye, engage with me, look at
Yeah.
me.
It was very frustrating, I think. And
Yeah.
I understand that frustration because that was mine too. And that was my first relationship. So I'm just like, I don't like, is this how it goes? Like, I'm trying to communicate. Like, am I over communicating? Am I like,
Yeah.
should I just let things be? And
Mhm.
usually, it would go a day or two, we wouldn't talk, and then we'd talk about it. But it was also a bad scenario thing where it's just like, if we're not arguing about it, it doesn't exist. So it's
Mm,
just like, oh, okay. So I try to talk to you about it. We don't talk about it. We let it go for a day or two, and then we just never talk about it again and just pretend like it never happened. And I'm like, these things need to be talked about. They need to be addressed. And
yep.
I'm trying to be polite and give you time, but
Yep.
how much time is too much time? You need to address situations in your life.
Yep. I hear you. Hmm.
So, going back to trauma, other trauma, like I said,
Hmm.
bullied in school too. I was just a weird, quiet kid, but I was just programmed to have to be, and I didn't even really come out of my shell or talk or anything until I was probably high school is when I was just like, I'm never going to see any of you guys again. It doesn't matter. Didn't
Mhm.
have any relationships in high school because I realized like all this is superficial. Like this is all just for show and clout. Like we're just dating, people are just dating people and it doesn't mean anything. You don't actually care about these people. You don't even know who they are. We're just in high school.
Yeah.
What you see about a person is the money their parents gave them for the clothes and the school books and the things they had and their grades. The better the grades, the more nerdy you are. You could still be a cool kid, but also looks alone.
Yeah.
And yeah, we weren't given a lot of things as kids. So
Mm.
we were just grubby kids. I mean, my sister, not so much, but I get that because, a daughter needs to be pretty and need new clothes and stuff all the time and whatever. But as far as guys go, we didn't get hand me downs mostly for the brothers.
Knowing what I know about you and your childhood, I can understand why high school would seem very superficial to you, because like in your life and growing up, you had to have a very high level of emotional intelligence in order to function in the house that you were at.
Yeah. I had to
And so,
know when to, I had to learn about fawning and fleeing and all that stuff too, like my dad would be like, come up here and take my boots off. And I'm like, I got to fawn. Sometimes I would be like, I know he's going to be mad and drunk when he gets home because let's say it's his birthday or something. I'm like, I'm just going to cook food now. So
Yep.
that way when he gets home, he can just drunkenly eat all that food,
Mhm.
and hopefully he doesn't come and wake me up and tell me how grateful he is. Like, it's a school night. Just let me sleep, you
Mhm.
know? So yeah, I had to be aware of just all those different
Yeah.
things. I froze sometimes, but what I learned is you're going to get hit if you freeze and don't answer, and you're going to get hit if you give the wrong answer. And one point too, um, he was so poorly at doing what he would say he was going to do. That's why he just had no respect for him. I think I said that in our last thing too, was just do the things you say you're going to do.
Mhm.
And he
Follow through. Yeah.
never followed through. And that's why I was just like, I have no respect for this person. It's
Absolutely. Yeah.
hard to even call him father, but um a lot of things where he would just be like, if you if something happens around here, let's say something breaks, and he'd be like, if you're just honest with me and tell me the real facts right away, I just, I won't punish you. I just want to know.
Mhm.
And he would say that, and then I'd be like, all right, it was me, I did it. And then he'd just fucking backhand you, and it's like, yes, lie is the only way I get what I want. So I
Yeah.
had to be a liar, and I had to be good at lying. I
Mhm.
came up with some outlandish lies. I'm not a compulsive liar now, but
Yeah.
if I do have to lie, I'm good at lying.
Yeah.
Sometimes I
It was
don't
a
know.
protective piece for you, something that you needed to do in order to survive and protect your sense of safety, for goodness
Mhm.
sakes. Yeah.
That's the thing too, is I
Mm.
never felt safe at home.
Yeah.
I felt safer at school. They'd be like, you can stay home today. You don't have to go in. And I'm like, no, I have a test to take. Like, I need to get school done with so I can get, the heck out of here. Like, I was like, I gotta do everything you say until I'm 18, and then I can go.
You never have to go back.
Yeah. And I mean, I go back and visit, and it was funny. I mean, now that, they're divorced now. Um, but so there's not really like, I don't really have to see him. But one time I went back, and he I always laugh and smile at all these traumatic stories and traumatic events,
Mm.
because it's just like, there's no way someone really said this and they really think that what they did is actually okay or even intelligent. But I went back home to visit one time. First thing the man says when I get in the door is, you should do the dishes. And I'm like, I could just leave. I was like, I'm here to see you and hang out with you. I was like, you don't get to boss me around and tell me what to do, you
Mhm.
know? Like, no, you don't get to do that.
Mhm.
Um,
Good for
to
you.
go on more stories, unless you had something to add, or
No, you can go on. Continue.
oh, so some other good stories, and I laugh because there's it's just like, there's no way someone actually said and did this, and it's like, it is a fucking. I keep swearing. I'm trying not to swear for the courtesy of the channel and stuff, but um,
We're just going to traumatize them through our traumatic stories. That's all that's going to happen.
yeah, they'll love that.
Give like a precursor. Be like, these stories might be a bit intense for some listeners.
Eh,
Ah,
yeah, maybe they could be trigger inducing, the
could
abusive ones, but I don't go into those into detail. Um, but
yeah.
one of the times, I worked all summer, and the first like $500-600 I ever made, I was like, I'm gonna spend this how I want, and I worked all summer, while I was in school still. And my dad, you know, was like, hey, can I borrow that money that you made? Mind you, this man has a 40-hour a week full-time job.
Yeah.
It's the end of summer.
Mhm.
He works outside construction, so it's not like he's hard up. He was like, hey, can I borrow that money you made? And
Mhm.
me being probably 14, probably 15, it's like, oh, like, you know what? I'm helping out the family. The family probably needs this for some reason, groceries or whatever. So I lend him the only amount of money I've ever made. And he says, yeah, I'll just pay you back my next paycheck or whatever. And uh, a week or two goes by, and I'm like, so are you going to pay me back or whatever for that money you borrowed? And he's just like, what money? And I'm like, you borrowed 600 from me, a couple weeks ago to like pay bills or something. I was like, I wonder if I was just going to get that back. And he was like, oh, that money? He's like, that's the money you owe me for raising you. And I'm like,
Ouch.
okay. And I just went to my mom and she got my
Oh.
uncle involved and they were just like, don't you
Mm,
fucking dare. Like,
mm,
don't steal from your own fucking kid. Like, go sell a couple more, you know, dime bags or fucking whatever. Go sell some drugs and like pay your kid back. Get that money back to your kid.
that's absolutely horrible.
And
I'm
it's
sorry.
funny because like I think it's funny now looking back and looking back at all the kids who would like talk to me and bully me or even just belittle me or think they're better than me. And I'm just like, I'm saving you. Just live in your little glass house and throw stones and mom and dad pay for everything and you can be in track because they support you. And you, like I couldn't be in anything. I couldn't be in any extracurricular anythings,
Yeah.
so I didn't have any extra friends. If I didn't see you at lunch, I couldn't see you at all. We couldn't be friends
Yeah.
until like my senior year where I
Mhm.
had a few good friends and their parents understood my situation because they knew my parents and the community and
Mhm.
the lack thereof.
Yeah.
So they would let me stay at their houses and hang out with them. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I just couldn't develop like at all
Mhm.
socially. I had to live under, his drill sergeant ways, do exactly what he said,
Mhm.
lie through my teeth to him. The school approached me multiple times when I was little and older and were like, "Are you safe at home?" And I knew to lie. I just knew to lie and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm safe at home. Yeah, I'm great." They're like,
Yeah.
like you have cigarette burns on your arms. And I'm like, yeah, no, I was roughhousing, and I was
Mhm.
just, whatever. Like I burned myself, you know.
I think like the high school kids that you talk about, so you had this level of emotional intelligence and they had this level and you needed that to protect yourself, right?
Uh-huh.
And then like it just occurred to me what a privilege it is to have mentally stable and secure parents. That's the way it should be. That's what
Yeah.
everyone deserves. But it's actually a privilege. Not everyone gets to have
No.
mentally stable, secure parents. And when you don't have that, it is a pain in the ass to develop and grow and
Yeah.
overcome your own trauma by yourself.
And I don't mean to do race at all, but people be
Yeah,
like, oh, white privilege. And I'm just
yeah,
like, just because I'm white does not mean I was privileged. Like
yeah, true.
you could still have, crazy backgrounds. Like everything I have to this day, I have made and bought myself.
Mhm,
My mom will slip me a 20 when I go visit her,
mhm.
for gas or for visiting or whatever, and holidays and birthdays, some money here and there. But like growing up, we got nothing.
Yeah.
You got your school supplies, and those were even complained about. Um,
Mhm,
Other than, I had a friend of mine in middle school and high school when he didn't, because he would get the cool new like skater boy shirts and, you know, um, all these new clothes and stuff. When he got something that he wouldn't wear so much anymore, I would
mhm.
go over and he'd be like, "You can wear that to school today," and then he'd just be like, "You're just gonna keep that, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's a cool shirt, and he would just never ask for it back. So I had a
Yes.
couple, cool skater shirts or whatever, like more than $5 Walmart shirts, yeah. My grandma would get us clothes for Christmas. Once my grandfather remarried, she would get us just clothes. And as a kid, you're like, clothes. But even at that age, I was still like, sweet clothes. Like I actually get to look nice for a while. Like I only had one pair of Jinko jeans ever when they were popular, and like she gave them to me. She knew all the cool kids had them, and like
Yeah.
I just wear them like 3 times a week or something as a kid. But
So it's like comparing yourself to all those other kids who had the really cool jeans, who had new clothes and new shoes all the time. It's hard to see yourself as privileged because they had so much more and you had so much less.
yeah, and their complaints were like, "Oh, I can't go to this party this weekend.
Mhm.
Like they won't let me go to this sleepover, even though they know and that going to this sleepover means you're going to go to this other high school party that's going to be going on or something. Like they know what you're up to. They know you're a bad kid and you're lying to them. Whereas, I was just born lying. So, and that's the thing too, is like I wasn't even allowed to do anything really. A lot of kids were scared of my dad. They'd be like, we don't even want to go over to your house. We're scared of him. And as I got older into high school, I was like, you guys are so scared of him. And I was like, I'm not even scared of him. Like I'm not scared of him, like I
Yeah.
never was. I never was afraid of him. I knew he was going to hit me and I just let him. One time he went and swung at me and I just like leaned over and like turned my head and he missed and he just got red in the face and he got super mad.
But
And I was like, fine. And I saw him come across again and I just closed my eyes and just took it just right to the face. I was like, yep. Because I was
Bradley.
like, I know that if I don't let him hit me across the face, now he's going to just start swinging,
Yeah.
close fist.
I'm
And he'd
sorry.
always be like, fight me, fight me. And I'm like, I don't want to fight you because I don't want you to know how strong I really am. And I don't think I was really that strong. But I was like, I don't want you to know how strong I am because there may come a day where I actually have to, you know. And I was like, I just don't want you to know what to be prepared for. So I was like, I'm just not gonna.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy. Wild house.
I don't know if you need to hear this or not, but you had a really shitty childhood.
Oh yeah, I know now.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the thing is too is people will like tell me about their stories and I'm just and I listen, open heart and whatever, and I don't switch it on me and be like, oh hey, like like, well, oh, that was your thing, well this is my thing. And that's what shuts people out. If you want to do what I do and you want to help people and like listen to people and get them to open up to you,
Mhm.
actually care. If you don't actually care, then they're going to notice it, they're going to read your body language, and they're going to close off to you. If when they tell you a traumatic story, you bounce back with, well, I had a similar story or mine was way worse, then they're just like, this person is just having a a contest with me, trying not to swear, but it's just having a contest with me about whose life is better or worse
It's
and
more
why
traumatized.
my life is harder or I had more trauma. I never try to compare traumas. I'll talk about them, but some people have had it worse. I
It's not even about that. It's like it's a resilience, mental resilience thing. So someone can be, I'll do soldiers like in Iraq. People can go to two different soldiers, soldier A and B can go to Iraq and be in the same scenario, suffer bombs, injuries, be in very intense traumatic situations.
Mhm.
Soldier A could suffer PTSD, have severe mental issues, turn to alcoholism. Soldier B, even though he had the same experience, might not have been affected at all. That he can come home, he can function, he can be a fully applicable, functional citizen in society. It
Mhm.
really, like, our mental resilience, the things that we eat, the way that we were raised, all of it accumulates over time to impact how do we respond to traumatic experiences. But everyone has sanctity of human life, things like that, all very important. But I'm like, yeah, as a soldier, if someone were to threaten my the people that I cherish and love, I'm going to have to do something about that threat. That's
Yeah,
a so
agreed. Like I'm the same way. Yeah, I definitely would. The kids in my family were very close, I think, because of the trauma.
yeah.
We
Sounds
were
like you guys
all, yeah, it really brought us together. My sister, only being a year younger than me, would also take on quite a bit of the responsibility as well. I don't want to,
were
you
really.
know, like say that we didn't, but um, I remember many, I say many, but it's probably only like 10,
Mhm.
which is enough times, um, where uh, dad would come home on the snowmobile, and the snowmobile trail from the bars could let you see the house from a mile or two away.
Mhm.
So if they're coming home at 10 o'clock at night and we were watching, cable or something on a school night, he'd come in and be furious.
Mhm.
So what would happen would be when he got within like that 1 mile mark or closer or whatever, you could start hearing snowmobile. And I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere in the boonies, so I knew it was likely them. So I'd be like, all right. I would tell my brothers or my sister or all of them and be like, just go to your rooms and I'm just going to take, this grenade because he saw the lights on. So
Mhm.
he's going to come in and be like, who was up in the living room? And he would do that. If I tried to also, like, he's coming, everybody go and pretend to be asleep, come in the house and just yell, it's midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and just, who's up? Who's fucking up? Like, who's up? Like come out now, because otherwise, and it just, like, I don't even know like what level of psychological warfare that shit is. Like, that's just nonsense.
It's traumatizing, definitely.
Yeah. It's like, who, I don't even know. And that's another thing that just helped me dismiss him as a father, because I'm like, not only does he do and say things, even to this day, that I'll say, these aren't things a father does to a son, much less a friend would even do to a friend.
Mhm.
Like, I can't even call you friend, and all the kids in my family and a lot of family members have called him by his first name
Yeah.
since for a long time, to be disrespectful. And I've
Mhm.
always given him the benefit of the doubt and tried and tried and tried. And I still try. That would be, I don't know if that's a trauma thing, but I will
Yeah.
always give someone another chance. Always. I've had uh, girlfriends leave me and I take them back 2, 3 times,
I won't. I'm
that's only happened twice.
I got a limit, Bradley. Like I will give people the benefit of the doubt. I will for them forewarning, fair warning, I'm reaching my threshold. There will come a point where I will be so hurt by you that I will never talk to you again.
I think one,
I give fair warning.
situationally,
Yeah.
could be talked about, but never two.
What
Never
do you mean?
two. Like, two incidents of cheating,
Oh,
or betraying your trust
yeah.
or something like that.
Fool me once. Yeah, let me down once. Fine. I'll give you a second shot.
Fine, let's talk about it. Let's explain it. Like, maybe it was like we were in a fight, or
Yeah.
we a break, which I don't even
Misunderstandings
believe in breaks.
happen.
That's not a thing, but
Yeah. But no, I have standards. So I love myself and I have standards for my relationships and expectations.
mhm.
And if someone doesn't meet them, I'm not going to give them my precious time and attention. And you shouldn't either. Nobody should. If the person doesn't meet your standards, if your father's treating you like shit, I don't give a sorry, I shouldn't swear,
I
but I
know, I
like get
try not to.
very passionate about it. I was like, if someone is treating you poorly and making you feel hurt and inadequate or worthless or just not respecting your boundaries, there is absolutely no reason to have that person in your life.
No.
None. I
and
don't
and
care.
that's something
Yeah.
that I would love people to know and hear, like, is
You have a
that
choice.
family is a choice, friends are a choice, family is a choice.
Who you allow into
um
your heart is a choice. It's an
yeah,
active choice. You do get to
i I gave my parents and my mother's not innocent in all this, but I gave
Mhm.
my parents, I was like, I will give you until I'm 18, because you are my caretaker. And I'm going to do everything that I can to respect you and your home, because there was food. There was very few times where there wasn't something I could whip up. Maybe I
Mhm.
didn't feel like, maybe all we had was like rice aroni and I didn't
Mhm.
want to make it. Doesn't mean we didn't have food. Now, was it provided for us? Not all the time. We
Mhm.
would cook fairly often for ourselves, or just fend for yourselves. And we would call and text, or they would leave notes, because this is back before cell phones. And it would just be
The
like,
good old days.
fend for yourself, or, there's something in the fridge or whatever. Um, but I can't remember what I was gonna say. I
Well, you
don't
kept
know.
giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Oh yeah, and like I said, till 18. Till 18, you have the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to, just give you the respect as a parent and give you a chance to prove that, like, all right, it's like, all right, it's the last 6 months I'm here. Like, don't, why would you want to push me away right now? Like, don't do it. Try to be nice to me. Try to be my friend.
Mhm.
It was hard because my dad would say, like, I just want to be your friend. But then he would do a lot of things that a friend would never do to a friend, you
Yeah,
know?
I hear you.
He would do, this is just a manipulation thing, and I never understood it, and I really don't understand it now. I do know the psychology of it, and like, it's just his narcissism and his control, but like, how could you live with yourself? He would be like, hey, I'd be like, hey, can I go to my friend's house this weekend?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, Sure. Um, I did want you to mow the lawn when we lived on like 4 acres. So like there was a big lawn to mow.
Mhm.
And he'd be like, all right, if you mow the lawn, because he's like, I just want it done by this weekend, you can go. Like, all right, fair. So let's say like Wednesday night and Thursday night, I would mow the lawn.
Mhm.
Because it would take like 2 days with a push mower.
Wow.
Um, we had a working riding mower. I just wasn't allowed to use it,
Sure.
whatever. Like, I don't understand that, dude, but whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so I would mow the lawn, and then Friday would come around. I'd be like, all right, I'd come home from school. I'd catch him when he got done home with work. Like, hey, um, like we talked about, I'm gonna go to my friend's house. Like, oh, you can't go.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why? Like, I thought this was our verbal contract. You said if I mow the lawn, I could
Mhm.
go. Like, oh, I need you Saturday. I'm like, okay, I'll let him know. And then Saturday morning come around, and all throughout the day, I'd just be waiting, just playing games in my room, waiting for him to come in and be like, all right, let's do this thing. And it was
Mhm.
just never anything. And he
Mhm.
knew that it was just his control, just so he had control,
I'm
you
sorry,
know?
Brett. That's
Yeah.
shitty.
So I could never take him for his word. The man has no honor, no
Mhm.
respect.
Mhm.
He's con man. And it sucks because he'll con his own kids out of their own money.
That does suck.
And it takes outside forces to get your money back from your own father.
It's horrible.
It is horrible. But yeah,
It is.
having good parents is a privilege in a lot of people. And I never rubbed it in people's faces. I just had to deal with it. And then I'm getting picked on the bus, and I'm getting picked on at school.
Mhm.
Oh, you look weird. You have crappy clothes, You're
Yeah.
not athletic. Well, like one, like my father would ever play any sport with me or teach me anything. Two,
Mhm.
like I could go to any of these things.
Mhm.
Like if I didn't go to the gym on my which we did at a gym later in high school, and I could have gone on my social studies, or not social study time, where you had a class off. Study hall we called it. But yeah, so I would have to do a lot of things if I want to do extracurricular stuff, try to do it on my study halls, or just
Mhm.
at home, you know.
Mhm. So what
So
do you think? I think we're reaching about an hour.
are we?
I think so.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
um
2 hour-long sessions. Final thoughts on trauma and what one of the, what would you say? Okay, so whittle it down for me. Like really simplify
mhm.
everything that you've gone through, everything that you've told me about during this week.
Yeah, so I guess I've talked a lot about myself, and people can understand where I come from. And I don't know. Just that, your trauma doesn't make you, like I wanted to talk about, is just because like I'm not a bad person now. In fact, I like to think I'm a great person, and I try to help people and recognize their traumas and their relationship issues. And, like I said, I probably have a deep heart to heart talk at least once a month, if not once a week. I mean, just 2 days ago, I had,
Yeah.
two guys I was talking to about relationships in their lives. And so I'm definitely a better person for it, because I took my trauma and, I mean, I wouldn't say weaponized it, but I definitely
Utilized.
took it under scrutiny and, tried to make the most of what I've learned and what I know.
Yeah, same.
Just, yeah, like the trauma doesn't make you, just because bad things happen to you doesn't mean you have to be a bad person. And I think anyone that does do that has trauma of their own that they need to deal with, because
For
it
sure.
just because bad things happen to you doesn't mean you have to lash out at other people.
Yeah. Or
Like
repeat
I
the,
seek to make everyone around me and my life easier and better,
yeah.
and even if it's just little things. And I personally try not to undertake things that are just out of my control. Like, what I don't stress out about celebrities and things like that. I try to focus on like my life and improving myself, and and I don't know if that helps. anyone at all, maybe with like anxiety and stuff, is just don't focus so much outward of things that are out of your control.
Yeah. I say the most valuable thing that I got out of my traumatic experiences was knowing that I found my way out of the darkness and out of the suffering. And now that I found my way and it's pretty well lit, I can help other people find their way. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the things that happen to me, maybe other things that happen to other people, I'm just more aware of it. I may be able to recognize that you have something going on or have had something go on in
Yeah.
your life and help pinpoint it and, help you rationalize it and deal with it yourself, even though I have no like professional experience doing so. But
Yeah.
with all my experience, you know, I can just help other people. So I don't know, just that your trauma doesn't make you, and that use it to help other people. And you don't have to go out of your way, to help people who have had similar things. But I think a lot of people will empathize with people who have similar trauma or even trauma in general, because you know how to connect with them and know how to speak to them and what will get through to them, in their situations.
I would almost fight to say that I I have to not I wouldn't say have to. I want to help other people work through their trauma because I've found my way through mine.
Hmm.
It's become my life's purpose. My trauma meant something because I've dealt with it, I've overcome it. It has a meaning for me. It brings value to my life, knowing that I can work through the sexual trauma, I can work through the intimacy concerns, and I can help people find their way. And that means that everything I went through has a greater purpose
Hmm.
because I can use that suffering and help mitigate the suffering of others.
Yeah. Right. And at least if you can help them even just heal quicker, you may not be able to prevent it or whatnot, but at least, stop the bleeding quicker and help them mend. And
That's the value. Like when I
yeah.
have a client that I work with, and one of them, she's gone through so much trauma, and she's just like, I'm afraid of being mentally ill my whole life. And I'm like, no, mental illness can be cured. I was like, do I seem like someone who's mentally ill to you? She's like, no, you seem good. You seem pretty well put together. I'm like, yeah, it gets better. It can be healed. You can overcome your trauma. You can lead a stable, consistent, happy life. It does get better. It
Mhm.
does.
I would
Keep
agree.
putting in the effort.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's good. That's a good note too to wrap up on too, is that it can get better, and it does, and it makes you stronger. It's,
Mhm.
use it to make yourself better, as much as you can. And I don't know, try not to centralize your thoughts and your life around things like that have happened, and just use it to stay strong and keep moving forward.
I love that. Stay strong and keep moving forward.
Mhm.
Well done,
Well,
Brett.
I was to say, yeah, I guess that's all then. That's, we'll wrap it up here for an hour. I don't know if you want to change subjects, do something after, who knows? Otherwise, we'll just come back next week and do a little sesh then. But yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for listening to anybody. I have like 7 or 8 more subscribers now, and I've only told a few people. So I don't
great.
know. I mean, I'll probably post after this one, like on Facebook and stuff, and
Yeah,
see where we can go. But like and subscribe, blah blah blah, the things that people say. So let me
comments.
know that what we're doing here is a good thing, and that you like hearing things that we have to say. And also, if you want to, maybe in comments and stuff or whatnot, just write and just ask us what you'd like to hear us do, or things that you'd like to hear us maybe go into more detail on,
Yeah, I'd love
would
to know.
help us, because I don't mind just preaching away and just talking to people. A lot of people will say, like, when I'm hanging out with them, like at parties or something, like, here goes Brad on his soapbox again. But no one's ever told me it's enough or annoying or it needs to stop. If it's
Mhm.
too much, you just don't need to listen. But everyone's always
Yeah,
thought that everything I have to say is very insightful. And even if it doesn't relate to you at all, being aware that people do have trauma will help you understand people sometimes, because sometimes you just don't know how to communicate with, you know, your girlfriend who just freezes up, and you just don't know what's going on or why they're doing that. So,
Yeah.
you know, at least if you listen in and you're aware of those things that exist, you can be ready for it if it ever appears up in your life too.
Mhm. Time
So
to
yeah,
say goodbye.
yeah, goodbye. Take care, and hopefully we'll have something out soon, next week or so. So
Mhm.
take care.